Tensions escalating and fears mounting of a nuclear catastrophe at Europe's largest power plant. Ukraine warning that Russia might be planning an imminent attack at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant today, which it would blame on Kyiv. Both sides alleging the other is planning a provocation. Ukraine's state nuclear company said today that Russia is planning to disconnect the plant from the power grid. This, as Ukraine's military officials tell NBC News, Russia told its own employees at the plant to stay home today. NBC has verified video that appears to show Russian military vehicles inside the plant, in other words, using it as a fortress, although it is unclear when that was taken. Ukrainians on the ground not taking any chances, conducting response drills. So joining me now is NBC's Josh Lederman, who's in Dnipro, Ukraine, and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Admiral James Stavridis. Josh, what's the latest from Zaporizhzhia about a potential attack? I know you've been talking to officials there, and you've been in constant touch with the International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors who've so far not been able to get in.
That's right, Andrea. So far, there have been no indications of an explosion or any kind of attacks at the site today, which is the good news. Although in the past, when the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has been shelled, it's happened after dark. So everyone is still bracing for what could happen this evening. But I got to tell you, it is really tough, not only for us, but for the international community to know exactly what is happening at any point in time at that plant. We were in Zaporizhzhia yesterday. The radiation levels were fine. People were still on the streets. We've now pulled back to Dnipro, but the only people who really know what is happening at that plant are the Russian troops who are there, the Ukrainian nuclear officials who are there working under harrowing conditions that officials say include torture, and the members of Russia's state-run nuclear company, Rosatom, who, according to my reporting from a Ukrainian intelligence official, were told do not come to work today, which was a very upsetting thing for the Ukrainians who are working there to hear as they wonder what exactly is going to take place there. And that really brings to the focus the need to have IAEA inspectors there, which was the topic of conversation today in a phone call between President Putin of Russia and President Macron, both sides saying that Putin did agree to allow inspectors to come in, but it's unclear when.
Yeah, we've heard promises from Putin on this before. So, Admiral Stavridis, at this point, there are a number of things to worry about. First of all, Ukraine being cut off from power, Europe being cut off from power, obviously a major play by Russia. Worst case, a power outage where the cooling waters would not cover spent fuel. And then there's, of course, a full meltdown possibility if there's some attack and counterattack and artillery somehow, hits the plant. And these plants, as I understand the design, and I used to cover nuclear energy full time as an energy correspondent for NBC, these plants are not as well designed, and the containment, the spent fuel, is not as well protected as they are in France and in America and other places.
Yeah, you've outlined the dangers perfectly, Andrea. I would simply add a little underline on the spent fuel. There's 200 pretty good-sized containers of spent fuel, which is highly dangerous. If that were to be accidentally shelled or, God forbid, deliberately opened, you could see a lot of mischief coming out of this. If you kind of analyze where Russia is on this, point one, this is very strategic terrain for them, where it's located in the entrance to the Crimea near Kherson. And so they like having troops in that area. Number two, you mentioned it, they want to pull the power grid of the Ukrainians down as much as possible. This is the largest of the Ukrainian nuclear plants. And number three, they want to scare the Europeans. They want to frighten the United States. They want us to feel as though we're living on the edge of 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl. Here's the bad news, we are. And so this one absolutely screams for international engagement. Josh has it right. You've got the IAEA poised to go in there. Macron doing the right thing, talking to Putin. The other interlocutor who could be helpful here is President Erdogan of Turkey, who very creatively put together the agreement between Ukraine and Russia that's got grain flowing out of Odessa. Good move. This is much more important. We ought to be seeing if Erdogan would be interested in reprising his role in that regard. This is a crisis.
And, you know, Josh, picking up on what the Admiral just said, you also have new reporting today that pro-Ukrainian saboteurs have also been involved in recent explosions at Russian military sites in Crimea.
That's right, Andrea. There's been some intentional ambiguity by the Ukrainians about how involved or whether they were involved in those attacks in Crimea. They've wanted to be able to leave it open to question. But according to a Ukrainian government official, there was the involvement of these partisans, these pro-Ukrainian, anti-Putin members of the community in Crimea who essentially conducted acts of sabotage. Now, this official is not saying whether they were directed by Ukrainian special forces, what involvement there might have been there. But there's also been questions about whether the Ukrainians can use U.S. weapons in Crimea, whether that would violate Ukraine's pledge to the U.S. not to use American weapons targeting Russia, given the fact that Ukraine, according to the U.S., is still part of the Crimea is part of Ukraine. A U.S. official tells me there are no restrictions. The Ukrainians can use American weapons in Crimea, and more of those weapons are going to be headed to Ukraine because in the last few minutes, according to our colleague Courtney Kuby, the Pentagon has announced just under $800 million more U.S. security assistance to the Ukrainians, which brings the total to well over $10 billion. It includes about 1,000 Javelin missiles, more ammunition for HIMARS, which the U.S. recently gave Ukraine. But importantly, it also includes new capabilities, such as about 15 new drones, unmanned aerial vehicles to use for surveillance.
And, Admiral, I know it's a pivotal time now. How quickly can they get up to speed, get delivered, and trained? That still would be about a month away at least.
Well, we're 6 months into this process of putting increasingly high-end weapons in the hands of the Ukrainians. And the short answer is, under the exigencies of combat, we know how to do this. The Ukrainians know how to do this. I think those weapon systems will be on a rocket ride to the front lines. That's bad news for Putin, particularly those HIMARS. I give them high marks, if you will, for their ability to reach behind Russian lines. This is all good news Josh has just shared with us.
Admiral Stavridis, thank you. Josh Lederman, thanks very much.